You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% Podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome, everyone, to the 10th episode of the 1% Podcast, the show where we dig deep with cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers in order to give you that 1% you need to keep pushing forward. Today is October 4th, and we are in full swing of Breast Cancer Awareness Month here. Today on the show, our guest is coming up on her 2-year anniversary for being a breast cancer survivor. So sit back and relax and enjoy Marce's story.
Marce was 35 years old when she was diagnosed with stage 3 triple positive invasive ductal carcinoma breast cancer. She's currently a stay-at-home mother and lives in Maine. Marce, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Truett. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So Marce and I got connected. I was actually at a sales conference in Fort Lauderdale several months ago, and I met her brother, John Lee Dumas, who is big in the podcasting world. And when I was speaking with him, he mentioned to me that his sister was also fighting her battle with cancer and kind of explained to me a little bit about our situation. So he connected us with email, and here we are today. Tell us why you think it's important to share your story.
Well, basically, like you said, I was 35 years old when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I didn't know anyone my age who had breast cancer, really even had been diagnosed with cancer, period. So it was kind of a little bit of a lonely time for me. I felt very overwhelmed and anxious about, what the next steps of my life would be, and going to start chemo. I felt like I was the youngest one there by a generation. So basically, I was introduced to a young women support group, and I was introduced to a bunch of women who are my age who have been diagnosed with breast cancer. And it just really made me feel like, I'm not alone in this battle, and I have people that, understand what I'm going through. And that was a big step for me to, feel more comfortable in the fact that, this can happen to anyone and you're not alone. So no matter where you are, you always have someone that you can reach out to who's going through the same thing that you are.
What's one specific takeaway that you hope people get from your story?
Well, I hope people realize that being, your own best advocate is very important. You know your body more than anybody else. And if you're feeling like there's some change going on, even if your doctor doesn't feel like it's a big deal, stick to your gut, your gut feelings, and just keep pushing forward. And it's your body, and you know it the best. So you need to be your own best advocate.
I think that's totally true. It's weird, but we do know our own bodies, and sometimes we ignore or try to, rationalize maybe how we're feeling or what something might be. But deep down, I feel like we always kind of know that when something's a little off. So.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your life prior to your diagnosis. What were you doing with your family, and how was your overall health?
Sure. So I met my husband, Justin, in 2003. We got married in 2006. We had our first daughter, who was born in March of 2011. Her name is Catherine Selena. We call her Casey. And then we had our second son and the final piece of our puzzle in 2014, and his name was William. And so I am a nurse, not currently working as you said. Right now I'm a stay-at-home mom, but still, use my nursing background here and there for my friends who call me with some, issues of their own. So that's always fun. And my husband's a commercial real estate broker. So it was really nice, when the kids were really young, our jobs gave us some flexibility to do things we loved, like hiking, biking, snow skiing, and traveling. I love to travel. Actually, my husband will not leave the state of Maine through the summer months at all. So usually we try to get out of there in the winter. But all in all, my life was pretty healthy. I'm pretty active. Like I said, we used to do a lot of hiking and snow skiing. Minimal stress in my life, considering having 2 young kids and a dog. But I'd say like my overall health was, pretty good, and life was, going great. Nothing to complain about, and everything was going good.
It's a pretty normal life. You guys have started your family. You were looking forward to a lot of things in the future. Tell us about the moments that led up to when you kind of knew something was wrong and you decided to go to the doctor.
Yeah, so it was probably about July of 2016. I, was doing a monthly breast exam, and I felt a little lump in my left breast. I had finished breastfeeding William probably about 6 months or so before. So I thought kind of, the abnormalities might have been like a clogged milk duct or something like that. So, I didn't really think much of it, but the next month, I did my next breast exam, and it was still there. And so I talked to my mom, and she was like, well, go to the doctor. And I'm like, Mom, I'm probably being a hypochondriac. Like, let's be serious. This is like probably nothing. And she's like, just go to the doctor, have it checked out, and then you can move on from there. So I was like, okay, fine. You always have to listen to your mom, right?
Right.
So I go to my doctor, and, she does an exam, wasn't concerned, and was like, let's monitor it. So waited about a month, and then went back in, and she did an exam again and said, I don't feel any changes. So, I'm really not concerned, but of course, if you want to have a mammogram, I totally support you, and, you can have a mammogram. And usually I would be like, oh no, if you're not concerned, let's just monitor it, like whatever, it's probably no big deal. But like I said, something in my gut told me just go have the mammogram. And so I decided to listen to my gut. So I went, and in October of 2016, had a mammogram and an ultrasound. And I'm a nurse, as I said, so they were doing the ultrasound, and I saw, plump lymph node, and I was like, oh shoot, that's not good. So then I decided to read my mammogram report, and my biopsy was scheduled for 10 days later. And I was like, so the biopsy was scheduled for 10 days later. So I decided, to read my mammogram in the meantime. And when I read the mammogram, I immediately knew that this was probably not going to be good. So I called the breast care center in Scarborough, and, I think my biopsy was scheduled for 2 days later. So this was actually, by now it was election day. So this is so it was election day. So I called the breast care center, and I was like, hey, I just read my mammogram. I'm like freaking out, and can you see me? So they were amazing. They took me in, and basically the nurse practitioner told me before I even had the biopsy that, yes, I do have breast cancer. Yes, it is seemingly most likely in my lymph nodes. And, she was like, you're at least stage 2. You will have to have chemo. and radiation and surgery, and you know, we'll go from there once we get the results of the biopsy. So that was like probably one of the hardest things I've, you know, ever had to deal with. But I still went and voted that day.
So tell us about like when you first got that news, like what kind of fears and insecurities were going through your mind?
Oh my gosh. Well, of course, like the first thing that goes through your mind is like, am I going to die? And I mean, I honestly, like, I couldn't even go home to see my children for 2 days. I went and stayed in a hotel room with my husband the first night. And then the second night I went and stayed at my aunt's house because I was such an emotional wreck. I didn't want my kids to see me like that. And I knew that if I saw them, I would, you know, just be even more emotional, because when something like this is thrown on you and you're thinking like, what, you know, how serious is this? How long has this been going on? Like, has it metastasized? Like, all these thoughts are like running through your mind. And also being a nurse, I think, is a good and a bad thing, because I know a lot and it's hard to turn myself into the patient. So, you know, all these thoughts are going through my head, and it's just, for me, I had a really hard time with it for a couple of days, but I was like, you know, I need to be there for my children, and I need my children, you know, because I knew that, you know, they would make me feel better. So after that initial like shock and emotions kind of wore off, I put my fighting hat on and I was ready for battle.
What kind of support did you receive from your family and friends when you first told everyone that you were diagnosed with cancer?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I mean, people who I was close with, people who I hadn't talked to in years, you know, reached out to us. We kept it pretty, you know, close to the vest for a while. I didn't like put it on social media or anything like that. I just wanted to kind of get through everything with like my, you know, close network of friends and my support group. But people, you know, that Justin went to college with sent us this amazing letter with like gift cards and like a cleaning service for 3 months, and someone set up a meal train for us, and people signed up like to bring us meals twice a week. And it was just really humbling of like the amount of love and support that I felt during initially, but, you know, really still to this day. It's just been amazing.
So you got your diagnosis, you started telling people about it. What was the treatment plan, and what was the next steps going forward that your doctor gave you once you figured everything out?
So when I, you know, was initially diagnosed, they were thinking, you know, stage 2, maybe they weren't really sure about like the surgery aspect yet. I had a couple second opinions, which I highly recommend. Is always, you know, getting a second opinion. And it is really great too, as you know, because although you go to get a second opinion, those doctors work so closely, like with my doctor here in Scarborough, and they share information. And, you know, I think doctors also like want you to get a second opinion. You know, they're not like offended if you go, you know, somewhere else to get more information. So I definitely highly recommend that. So basically my plan was I had to do 20 weeks of chemo. So I did, it's called ACT. And because I was triple positive, which triple positive are the receptor blockers. So estrogen positive, progesterone positive, and HER2 positive. So I was positive for all 3 of those, which meant I had to do ACT for 20 weeks. And then I had to do a year of Herceptin and Perjeta, which is a targeted therapy. And also I did 33 rounds of radiation, and I had a left breast mastectomy initially. And then before I did the radiation, and then I recovered from radiation. And then I did a prophylactic right breast mastectomy with immediate reconstruction of both breasts using the DIEP flap method, which is DIEP. And that's basically where they give you a tummy tuck, and they take your skin and fat and tissue from your stomach, and they make your boobs with it. So it's like all my own tissue. I don't have implants in or anything. So.
Wow. So 20 weeks of chemo, 33 rounds of radiation, ended up having almost a double mastectomy when it was all said and done.
Yeah.
What does that do to your self-image when you start going through chemo, you start going through radiation, you start feeling terrible, you get all the side effects from that? Like what, when you have reconstructive surgery as a female, what does that do to your self-image as you're constantly going through this battle and looking yourself in the mirror every day?
I think obviously everyone kind of looks at it differently. I was so lucky to have the most amazing husband. I'm going to start crying. It's really hard as a young woman to lose, your breasts and your hair. I mean, those are things that kind of identify you. And it's harder now to talk about, honestly, than going through it at the time, just because my husband was so supportive, and he was like, you are beautiful. I love you so much. And like, I know this is hard for you, but he's like, you are still the same beautiful person that you've always been. And so it was really, it made it, although it wasn't easy, it definitely, like, having that support and like knowing that, the person that you're spending the rest of your life with, like, still finds you attractive, I think made a huge difference for me, at least.
Just hearing you say that, that's obviously it's a very personal moment for you guys, and being able to have that support, definitely we're not in this battle together. Cancer just doesn't affect the person that has it. It affects everyone around you. It's like everybody gets cancer in a indirect way, the people that love you the most. And I think it's absolutely amazing you had that support system there. Not everyone has that. So it's great to hear that you had that, and he kind of helped push you through some of those hard times. So as you were going through your treatments and stuff, you start losing your hair, and people start looking at you funny, and everybody gives you that look. Like, some people don't want to look you in the eyes. They think, oh my gosh, if I look at this person, they're going to die. And all those things people, think about us whenever they see us going through things. What's some of the best and I say worst advice you may have gotten as you were going through your treatments?
It's true. Like, honestly, before I was diagnosed with breast cancer, if I was to see, someone walking down the street, I wouldn't know, like, what to say to them and, like, how to react. Like, even if I knew them, like, even if a friend of mine, if they were diagnosed with cancer, like, before this happened to me, I think I would have a hard time, like, comfortably saying, like, like, what do you say? Like, I'm so sorry, you're going to beat this, like, blah, blah, blah. You always feel like no matter what you say is just not right. And so I did feel that, I had a lot of friends and a lot of support, like I said, but I did lose a couple friends during this time because I feel like it made them uncomfortable. And that's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. But I hope that people realize that just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean that you can't, be there for your friends. And if you don't know what to say, it's okay to say that. It's okay to be like, I am so sorry. I'm here for you. I love you. I don't know what to say, but just know that I love you and I'm here for you. That means a lot, because it is hard to know if you're saying the right thing. And I don't think there's really ever any right thing to say. I think that you just need to be there for your, whoever is going through it. And I think that's a really important thing. And then also, like, just as a, as a patient or as a cancer, survivor, just to be present during, during the treatment or during this phase of your life, because, you still have people that you need them to be there for you, but you also need to be there for them, because they need to know that you're okay and that, yes, this is a hard part of your life, but you're still living, you're still alive. And so be alive, be present.
I think sometimes when we're fighting, most of our energy is spent on, trying to fight this, trying to beat this. And we get so motivated to do that in a lot of ways that sometimes we forget to communicate with everyone else. Hey, I'm okay. I'm trying to fight hard over here. Just kind of give me my space a little bit. Or, just we forget to communicate our emotions. And sometimes they build up and we just explode all over the place and like don't know what to say, or just, kind of go off into our own and everything. So I think it's really important, like what you said, is to be able to communicate that to a lot of different people, or the people that are closest to us.
And, it's hard because, as you know, everybody has their own story. Everybody deals with things differently. Everybody approaches, situations differently. And you have to do what's best for you. But like you also have to be mindful of those around you and know that, they're fighting for you, and fight for yourself, but fight for them too.
So you're going through all these treatments, everything's going along, you're taking this one step at a time. I think during everybody's journey that we have a moment, or we have a collection of moments that kind of stand out to us, those pivotal moments where, something very significant happened, or something that unexpected happened that kind of got us back on track. Because, we all had those moments of anxiety, fear, depression, worry about the next situation and all the treatments. And then just those moments of just utter sickness where you feel like death, you feel terrible about yourself. Can you describe some of these pivotal moments? Maybe it's a collection of moments. Maybe it's one specific moment where you decided, hey, this is a crappy circumstance that I'm in, but I'm not going to be a victim of this circumstance. I'm actually going to fight even harder to overcome this. Did you have a moment where you wanted to quit and then you decided to kind of keep going? Or what are some of these moments that you had specifically with your treatment?
I would say, like I said earlier, the first couple of days after I was diagnosed was very hard for me, very emotional, scary. I was angry, frustrated, like, why is this happening to me? Healthy, I'm young, it's kind of like, having that like woe is me moments where I think everybody, you deserve to have those, because you're like, what is happening right now in my life? Like, I'm 35 years old and 2 young kids, and now you're telling me I have to, go through 6 months of like grueling, treatment. So it was difficult. It took me, a couple of days to get my mind wrapped around that. But honestly, after those couple of days, I kind of picked myself up by my bootstraps and I said, you're going to beat this. You're going to fight. You're going to have a positive attitude. You're going to be there for your family, just like they're there for you. And, I kind of just decided that I wasn't going to let myself, be negative. I was going to have a positive attitude. I was going to do everything I could. And I would allow myself to have moments of, being emotional, because that's totally normal, but I wasn't going to let negativity or, that like sad emotions like take over my life. I was going to, make the choice myself to be positive, stay strong, And I really feel like, honestly, that got me through treatment. Also, I don't know if this has ever happened to anybody else, but I think because I, when I was diagnosed, I was a young mom. And so I thought like how I was feeling was normal, like lack of sleep. And, maybe I wasn't getting quite as much exercise as like I should be. I hadn't quite like lost all that baby weight yet. So I was like, maybe didn't really realize how crappy I was feeling. And then honestly, like when I started chemo, I started feeling so much better. It was kind of weird. Like I had more energy, probably the steroids, but I had days obviously where I didn't feel great, but all in all, I feel that, for me, chemo wasn't horrible. And I feel like it was because I was, sick and my body needed it. But I think it had a lot to do with like my attitude and just trying to stay positive and not let those negative anxiety ridden moments like take over my life.
What was it when those moments, was there something specific? Is it what was that like one motivating factor? Was it your family? Was it your faith?
Yeah, I would say definitely my family. Especially when you have, young kids, you're thinking, I want to see these guys grow up. Like, I want to see my daughter get married. And, you're thinking about these things that you didn't really think you would need to think about for years, but all of a sudden they're all kind of like coming down on you. So it can be quite emotional, but I just knew that, if my family was going to be there and be strong for me, then I needed to be there and be strong for my family. And not just my family. Like I had, like I said, a big core group of friends and a support system that they were just so amazing that I couldn't even get down on myself because I was just so lucky and blessed to like have these people in my life. And I felt so loved and cared for. I just knew that I had to like fight for them, and I had to be, positive for myself, but also for them.
It sounds like to me, your support system is what really drove you to fight through all this. Everybody was cheering you on and supporting you so much that you didn't even almost have an option to want to give up. You took all their energy and you just funneled it towards your sickness, and it gave you all the strength to keep pushing through everything, which I think is absolutely amazing. Again, it's not a luxury everyone has, but if that's what's in your life at the moment, instead of rejecting it, you actually accepted it and allowed it to come into your life and allowed it to move you forward. So what kind of advice do you have to the people listening out now that are maybe having a hard time with allowing people in, allowing people to give them the strength they need to push forward?
I know, it definitely can be hard to accept that. I mean, it's not something that we're necessarily like used to in our lives. And I just think, one thing that if I was to tell people is you have a support system and you're lucky enough to, have, people who care about you and love you and want to help take care of you. Like, let them help. They want to help. They're there for you. And if they didn't want to help, they wouldn't be there. And like I said, I had a couple close friends who, just could not deal with the situation. And that's, totally fine. It's hard to accept sometimes, but, you can't change people, and all you can do is accept the people in your lives that like want to be there and let them help you. And it's hard sometimes to accept help, but, this is the time in your life where, just take it all, just give it all to me. That's what I said. Like all the love, all the hugs, all the everything, just accept it. And, and then repay that forward. Like, when you're healthy and you're, ready to, take on life full charge again, pay it forward, do it for someone else, be there for someone else, let them know that, they're not alone.
Love it. So where are you currently at with your journey?
Well, I am currently almost a 2-year survivor, which is so exciting.
Congratulations.
I thank you. The American Cancer Association actually says that you are a survivor from the day you were diagnosed. I don't know if you knew that, but so as soon as you're diagnosed, you are a survivor. So you just put that in your head and keep that in your head throughout the whole thing. I am a survivor. I can do this. But I am, pretty much done with everything. I had my spinal surgery in February. And I'm done with all my targeted therapies. So now it's really just like my maintenance medications. I have to take a pill every day, and I have to get a shot in my butt once a month, which is fun. So yeah, that's about it. I'm just trying to, I started a young women's support group on Facebook, which has really taken off. And so I'm just trying to kind of, like I said, pay it forward and, be as much help and that I can be for other people.
How's your perspective on life changed? I feel like there's a pre-cancer you and there's a post-cancer you.
Yes, definitely. I definitely feel like I am more appreciative of life. I, obviously have my moments of where I'm like I want to strangle somebody, but I look at it and I'm like, listen, life could be worse. It can always be worse. I'm so fortunate to be where I am today. Before I would let things stress me out. Like right now I'm looking at my kitchen and there's like dishes in the sink, and that would like stress me out. But I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let the little things stress me out. I'm going to enjoy life. And if that means that the dishes don't get put away until, after lunch, that's totally fine. And I also, one of my friends said something to me, which really, resonated with me and stayed with me, which is, I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Oh, I love that. So what does that quote mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
That you're not the same person you were 2 years ago, which is not a bad thing. What does that mean to you?
It means, I've changed, I've grown, I've been through this experience that you don't want to go through. I've, lost my hair and now it's growing back completely different. I'll always have, this experience on the back of my mind, but I honestly think that it's made me a better person, a better mom, a better wife, and in a small, tiny way, I do thank cancer. Very small, very tiny. But.
It's whatever it takes to get us there. I think lots of times I've had several conversations with people, and even I'll say in my own life, the way I appreciate and value things has dramatically changed, especially relationships. I think you'd mentioned earlier about, losing some friends through all this. And I think that's kind of the way things get sifted out. And, we see who's really there for you, who can support you, what relationships are most important in your life. And then those important relationships, you tend to pour more value into those and less into ones that maybe aren't necessarily as important. So, whatever it takes to get us there, I think is something that we just have to accept. And it sounds like you're doing a really good job of that. So I like to end each podcast where we have a chance to get to know you a little bit more. I know you said you have a women's support group on Facebook. Do you mind sharing that with us? And that way maybe someone listening could join in if they wanted to?
Yeah, sure. It's called Tatas and Tapas. So Tatas and Tapas, Tatas and Tapas. And it's a young women's support group for, maybe we don't really have an age limit, but maybe premenopausal women, just because now another bonus of having breast cancer is I'm going through menopause at the age of 35, but actually no, I'm 37 now. But yeah, so it's just a group. It's a lot of, online support, just people who are going through the same things and just kind of you can ask advice or whatever. We also do meetups. So it's, I started out having it be Maine based, but we actually have some people from New Hampshire and Massachusetts that have joined the group, and they've also connected themselves. So it's kind of cool that it's, moving down the New England. So I'd love to have, if anybody wants to join, that'd be awesome.
Awesome. So tell us 2 things that motivate you now that you're on the opposite end of the cancer diagnosis.
Definitely my kids, for sure. And basically, just the will to live. Like, having cancer really, is a slap in the face, and it can be a huge wake up call. And you're like, do I want to do this? And if I do, how do I want the rest of my life to be from here? And I think being able to look into the future is huge.
Do you have any supplements or products or websites or anything that you recommend people to check out?
I do vitamin D, which is really important, I think, especially in Maine. And I don't know if you've heard this, but I've actually heard that there is some evidence that shows that low vitamin D does increase your risk of cancer. So I'd say do the vitamin D. It also helps with, your body absorbing calcium for bone growth. So there you go. There's my nursing spiel for you. And I've been using, I don't know if anybody else has trouble sleeping as I do. I think it's part, a little bit of anxiety from everything that's been going on, and part I've always just been a crappy sleeper. But my brother just got me some, they're called Swanwick glasses, and they're blue light blockers. So basically it takes out like all the unnatural light. And what happens at nighttime is if, you're watching TV, or if you're on the computer and you have that unnatural light coming, it raises your cortisol levels. And cortisol is what, it keeps your energy up and, keeps your body from like wanting to go to bed at night. So these like block that light, and it actually like really helps a lot. I've been sleeping so much better, and I take liquid melatonin on the side, and I've been sleeping like a baby. So.
Oh,
and sleep is so important, as you know.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that in the show notes for you. What's the last book you've read?
So that's kind of funny and a long story, but I just finished this book called Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. And the reason I'm reading it is because my daughter has been having a little bit of separation issue, especially at nighttime with like going to bed. She's afraid she's going to wake up and I'm not going to be here, and not like she doesn't think I'm like going to be in heaven or anything. She just thinks I'm going to be like at the grocery store or something like that, like, and leave her home alone, which I would never do. So anyways, my friend who's a social worker recommended this book, and it's actually, if anybody's having, any problems with like their kids sleeping, or even any type of like attitude behaviors, it's a great book and a very easy read that, gives you some really good insight and some good language on how to relate to your kids.
Do you have a favorite recipe or food, since you guys were voted the best, was it best food in America the city for the best food in America or something like that?
Yeah, like 2018, like food city of America or something like that. I don't know. But it's funny. I tend to get obsessed with food. And so right now I'm on a super roasted beets. I've been making those like 3 times a week, and then roasted artichokes. So I love all, like, I'm a fresh vegetable type of girl. So any, like, summers are my jam because of all the farmers markets. But I'd say anything that I can roast in the oven is something that I will eat happily. And my mom's spaghetti sauce recipe.
All right. Final question. What are 3 items that you have on your bucket or life list moving forward that you want to accomplish?
One is definitely to travel as much as possible, because I love to travel, which is, like I said we're going to Rome. I'm taking my daughter to Rome for 2 weeks in October. We're meeting up with John and Kate there, so it'll be fun. So definitely travel is one anywhere. My second one for my life bucket list basically is to raise respectful, responsible, and safe children. So that's one of, a big goal of mine. And then my third bucket list is to redo the third floor bathroom of our house, which is our master bathroom. And right now, our bedroom and bathroom are there, and it's like there's no door to the bathroom. And I think in order to have a happy, healthy, lasting marriage, you need a door to your bathroom. So that is my goal very soon.
No, I love that. I couldn't agree more. So,
yeah.
Well, Marce, thank you for taking time today to share your story. The reason I wanted people to listen to your story is because your approach is different than a lot of other people's. Like the fact that you said you got more energy and stuff going through chemo is a lot different than some other people say. It's the complete opposite for other people. But you were able to allow the collection of support that you had to come into your life to really let that drive you through all of this, to have a positive attitude, which I think is really important, because if the first thing you think of is I'm going to die, which I think is a majority of the way we all feel when we first hear those words, you have cancer, going from that moment to where you are now, where you're on the back end of this and you live your life completely differently. You said you're a better mother, a better wife, an overall better person. And the first thought you had was, I was going to die. So that journey that led you from that moment all the way to here, I think is really important for people to listen to and people to hear, because, people are going to listen to this that are in different stages of their journey. Maybe they're at that moment where they do think they're going to die. And your message here today will give them something to look forward to and something to hope for, because it does get better, in most cases. So I appreciate you sharing your story today. And I love the fact that we, serendipitously be able to connect to each other from a happenstance meeting, several months and stuff ago. So I love it the way it's put together like that. So again, thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate it. And we will be in touch with you soon. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Truett.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to OnePercentPodcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.